Today we have the testimony of Amir, a Muslim extremist who had an encounter with Jesus. Please like and subscribe as it helps us to continue publishing more testimonies like this. My name is Amir. I was born under a sun that burned through the earth's crust and made you feel that, by simply surviving, you'd earn something in this world. Growing up, life was simple yet harsh, and the boundaries of right and wrong seemed so clearly drawn in my village. Respect, faith, and strength, these values built me, shaped the way I saw myself, and, ultimately, the way I saw the world. As a child, my mother would sit with me by the light of an oil lamp, her hands rough from the day's work as she gently traced verses in the Holy Book. The words soothed me, held me close in a world that often seemed indifferent. Yet, in those verses, I always felt something more, an urging, a purpose. The stories of prophets and great leaders, men who had fought for what they believed in, stirred something deep in my young heart. The thought of living for a cause, for something greater than myself, was intoxicating. Even then, I wanted my life to matter, to be significant in a way that left an imprint on the world. Years passed. Life remained hard. I was drawn to those in my village who spoke of honor and sacrifice. They called for purpose, for unity, and for us to be part of something that would change our lives forever. I listened closely, letting their words plant seeds in the soil of my own ambitions. Before I knew it, I was swept up, marching alongside brothers who believed as I did, who were ready to lay down their lives for our cause. But what was the cause? I asked myself that often, sometimes in the quiet of night when the stars looked down like unblinking eyes. I knew I had answered a call that resonated deeply in my soul, yet I couldn't shake a subtle sense of uncertainty, like a rock wedged inside my shoe. Those feelings were things I could ignore, and I often did. It's easy to push doubt away when everyone around you believes the same as you, when their voices drown out the soft murmurs of your conscience. We trained, we prepared, and I thought I was ready. Ready for what lay beyond this life, ready for the sacrifice, ready for the rewards that I had been promised. But destiny has a way of interrupting our certainties. I remember the moment everything changed. We were on a mission, one I had prepared for with an almost religious devotion. I carried my sense of purpose as a shield, repeating prayers that had become as familiar to me as the beat of my own heart. I told myself this would be my offering, my contribution. Then, in the blink of an eye, my world shattered. I remember a blinding light, a thunderous roar, and the taste of blood as I was flung into darkness. I felt my body failing, consciousness slipping away, and then, nothing. But that nothingness didn't last. I found myself in a place unlike any I'd known, a realm devoid of light and yet searingly bright in its revelations. My mind grasped to make sense of it. It wasn't the paradise I had been promised, nor was it anything I could have imagined. It felt timeless, but not eternal. Empty, yet crowded with sorrow. I walked through what seemed like the shadow of an ancient city, worn down by ages of silence. Around me, others appeared, people I recognized from the path I had chosen, men who had spoken of glory and duty. But there was no triumph here, no satisfaction. Their faces were twisted in despair, their voices a low murmur of regret. I saw in their eyes a hollowness that mirrored my own reflection. Then, through a thick veil of mist, a figure stepped forward, radiant in a way that both comforted and unsettled me. He held no weapon, wore no symbol of power, yet his presence alone forced me to my knees. Amir, he spoke, his voice both familiar and foreign, as if from some distant memory. Do you understand now? I wanted to speak, to protest, to say that I had followed what I thought was right. But the words died on my lips. In that place, pretense was stripped away, and the only thing left was the truth that I had long buried under my resolve. The figure looked at me, a sadness in his eyes I could not understand. The path you chose was never mine to give, he said softly. Your heart was filled with zeal, but not with love. Your purpose was bound, but it lacked compassion. As I knelt there, feeling the weight of every decision I had ever made, a vision unfolded around me, images of the lives I had touched, not in love or kindness, but in fear and destruction. I saw myself as if from a distance, a man driven by fervor but blind to the pain I had caused. The figure before me seemed as if he were made of both light and shadow, holding within him the weight of ages and yet the purity of something new, something I had never known but had always been searching for. His gaze pierced through every mask I had worn, and in that moment, I felt bare and small, stripped of every justification and every belief that had once made me feel strong. Do you see, Amir? He asked, his voice calm but powerful, echoing in the vast emptiness around us. The mist seemed to part at his words, revealing scenes from my past, fragments of a life I had tried to mold into meaning through force, fear, and fanaticism. I saw the faces of people I had once regarded as enemies, individuals whose lives I had taken or who I had influenced to turn to violence themselves. In each face, I recognized not only fear and pain but also the startling humanity I had overlooked. Each pair of eyes seemed to ask me why had I turned my heart to stone? Why had I believed that my path justified their suffering? I found myself reaching out, as if I could touch them, speak to them, somehow explain myself. But the vision was beyond my reach, a distance that would never close. I could only watch, helpless, as the hurt I had caused unfolded like a river of sorrow before me. The figure continued to speak. Amir, you were given a heart capable of love, a mind capable of wisdom, and a life meant to uplift others. And yet, you chose a path that brought only division and harm. His words stung like a sharp wind, cutting through my pride and defenses. You were given eyes to see the beauty of creation, yet you chose to view others as threats, your heart closed to the possibilities of peace and understanding. The weight of his words pressed down on me, sinking into the marrow of my being. I knew, in that endless moment, that he was right. I had spent my life convinced that my way was the only way, that my truth was the sole truth, blind to the wisdom and goodness that could be found in others. Then, as if reading my thoughts, the figure's expression softened, and I felt a glimmer of something unexpected: mercy. Despite the horror of my actions, the regrets that piled upon me like stones, he looked at me not with scorn but with a strange tenderness. Every soul is given the chance to seek truth, Amir, he said. True faith is not built on hatred, but on love. A heart turned against others turns against itself. I wanted to ask him who he was, why he had come to me, and how he could speak with such conviction about love and faith. But even as I opened my mouth, I felt myself being drawn away, the visions fading into a swirling mist. The last thing I saw was his face, serene and steady, and a whisper in my mind that I would carry with me forever: seek the light, Amir. Seek the light that welcomes all. I woke with a jolt, my body aching, and my mind reeling from the vision that had been as vivid as life itself. The air around me was still, the world eerily quiet, and I lay there, staring up at the stars as if seeing them for the first time. The clarity of the vision did not fade. Every word the figure had spoken, every regretful face I had seen, every moment of my life that I now questioned, they stayed with me, haunting and humbling me. I realized, in the stillness of that night, that I could no longer return to the life I had once known. I could no longer pretend that my path was righteous or that my actions had been justified. Over the following days, I moved slowly, my body recovering but my soul feeling raw, as though a wound had been opened that I could no longer ignore. I didn't know where to turn, only that I could not return to my old ways. The zeal that had once driven me had been replaced by something else, something quieter but infinitely more profound, a yearning for peace, for forgiveness, and for a chance to live a life of meaning without causing harm. I began to read, to search for teachings that spoke of love, compassion, and forgiveness. I found solace in stories of those who had forgiven their enemies, who had chosen kindness over vengeance, and who had sought unity in a world rife with division. Among these teachings, I was drawn to the message of unconditional love, the call to forgive even those who had wronged you, to live humbly, and to serve others. These ideas had once seemed weak to me, but now they felt like a revelation, a truth I had been blind to. My journey led me to Christianity, to the teachings of a faith that emphasized love over judgment, mercy over wrath. As I read the words attributed to Jesus, the call to love one's enemies, to turn the other cheek, and to live a life of service, I felt a peace that was foreign but deeply fulfilling. The decision was not easy. My past was filled with shadows, my heart still bore scars, and I knew that forgiveness, both for others and for myself, would be a path I would have to walk daily. But I knew, too, that this path was the only one I could take, the only way to live a life that could one day bring healing instead of pain. Years have passed since that night. The man I once was is a distant memory, a shadow I no longer recognize. I spend my days in service to others, working in places torn by conflict, reaching out to those who feel lost, broken, or abandoned. I know the road they have walked because I once walked it myself. When people ask me what changed, I tell them of the vision, of the man who spoke to me with both mercy and justice, and of the path that led me to a life of peace. I share the teachings that changed my heart, the words that taught me to see each person not as an enemy but as a fellow soul on a journey, just like mine. I am not a man without regrets. I carry the weight of my past with me, but I no longer let it define me. Instead, it reminds me of the path I have chosen and the mercy that was shown to me. And in that mercy, I have found a purpose that brings not division but unity, not hatred but love, and in that, I have found the truth I was always searching for.